Hello and welcome back to Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. Ooh, 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 ooh. I've got such an incredible episode on manifestation and mindset and becoming your most true, amazing, authentic self. I can't wait to share it with you. Guys, I have a bunch of actionable insights and tips teed up for you that are so awesome, including, spoiler alert, the next moment is taken care of. The next moment is taken care of. So I invite you just to be here now. Let's get into it. Samantha Chung is a mindset and manifestation expert on a mission to help more people wake up and live fully as their authentic selves. As a highly sought after coach and influencer, her message is resonating wildly across the web with about 1 million engaged fans who follow Samantha's clear, sincere, and highly motivating guidance. Samantha is the host of the wonderful podcast Spiraling Higher and is about to be a published author, which I want to hear about your book. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much, Andrea, for that beautiful introduction. It is so crazy hearing people introduce me sometimes because I feel almost as if they're talking about someone else. But it's also beautiful to receive that because it's a reminder of, yeah, I have been doing the work and I have been showing up with a mission and a purpose. So yes, so beautiful to affirm those things. And yes, I'm working on my book right now, my very first book. Lots of edits and restructuring, and then feeling like I'm doubting what I originally intended. So I am really crediting anyone who has ever gone on the journey of authoring a book because you change so much throughout the process. I started it almost 3 years ago and I've just evolved so many different times. And I want to make sure that it's authentic to who I'm becoming, but also who I was. So it's an interesting process, but yeah, thanks for asking about that. It's a fun process.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that because I'm also a published author, and oh my gosh, it like you go through the forge and I presume your book is going to be deeply personal, like my book. And I remember my publisher was finally like, Andrea, the baby needs to get born. I'm like, no, I just want to keep editing it. In fact, I'll tell you a story. So my book, Radical Acceptance: The Secret to Happy Lasting Love. It was at the time, still is just such a deeply personal, passionate project. And I remember, I just put my whole heart into it, and I would write it from about, no joke, midnight to about, or 11 p.m. to about 3 or 4 in the morning. My kids were really little, and I was running my publishing business as my day job. So just grinding for, months and months on end to get this thing done. And so I sent the galley in, and there were some edits back and forth. My agent was helping, I had a wonderful editor at Simon & Schuster. And it was like, okay, great. Like, I love where this is going. And then they sent me a galley that I read on a flight going to Dallas. My family and I were going to a friend's wedding. And I remember I was like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm just going to bask in this great galley, this great manuscript. I got off the plane, and I was so devastated. I was like, this sucks.
Oh no.
Yeah, no. And I don't cry very much, but I remember we were in this wonderful hotel, and I just remember sitting on the bathroom floor, crying my eyes out. My son walks in. He's like, Mom, what's wrong? And I'm like, my book is terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And it was one of the most kind of humbling and like split me right open experiences of my life. And then the other quick one I'll tell you, I realize we got so much more to talk about with manifestation.
I know.
We're being present, right? We're being authentic. We're just getting into it. I also wanted this book to be a New York Times bestseller, and it wasn't. And that broke me open in the best effing way possible, right? Because my ego was so invested in, I want this to show everybody in the world how awesome I am, right? And all the stuff that comes with wanting that kind of external accolade. And so I'm so grateful for every bit of it. I'm proud of what I wrote. I'm grateful for what it gave, where it shined little spotlights inside of me that needed to be seen and healed. So just from one author to another who are, as we share similar paths toward authenticity, um, I ask you to put your seatbelt on as you labor through your book, and it just, I know with you, based on everything that you put out in the world, it is going to be extraordinary.
Thank
But
you.
those are my just little like, oh my God, it is so personal and it is such a lift and it is the best thing ever.
Thank you so much for just following your flow and giving me those words because I trust you and you've done so many incredible things. And so I feel really grateful to be in your presence and co-creating together. But a lot of my work is about how to not make things mean anything about you. And I'm finding that this feels like my final boss, almost like the ultimate test of that, because it's hard to not make the thing you're creating about you, right? It feels like it's so easy to have judgments about it because you're making it. But I've had to sort of create this separate persona for myself in order to get out of that self critical lens because it's hard to come back to what I've written and not just go through it with this evil fine tooth comb and
The
judge
critic,
everything.
right? That to me is the beautiful, exquisite experience that this kind of project, especially such a personal one, gives us because yeah, you could edit it to death and it never gets out. I mean, or you can say, okay, it's good enough. And ultimately like back to like, and I'm good enough, right? But that I think you and I share a high degree of perfectionism and, we'll get into, some of the things that have motivated you on your path to do this important work, but just this like constant like doing and proving, um, it's like it's never enough. I mean, that's the effing secret. Like
That's
it's
it.
never enough. Like it can never be edited perfectly. So what the fuck?
Yeah, because I mean, you're serving like an insatiable part of you. And so it's so ironic because I won't go too much into it, but that's actually what the book is about how you can't satisfy the part of yourself that's seeking to be satisfied. And so it's almost like this strange parallel of my own journey of writing and editing it, and that's why it's taking as long as it's taking because I want the words to resonate at a level of truth that I'm embodying. But as I go through it, I find that I can still go into those cycles of self-criticism and like believing it. And so that's what slows me down. But ironically, the book is about being aware of you going into those cycles and learning how to become aware of them, spot them, see that the part of you that's getting you to like make that change or like judge you for saying this or creating it like that, that's actually the part of you that could never be satisfied with what you create. And to live from that lens is to never accept and love the self. And so, yeah, it's been this wild journey that is mirroring what state of consciousness I'm in as I'm writing and editing. So, yeah, didn't expect to go down that route today, but it's yeah, I appreciate the words from another author because it's a slog.
Well, yeah, I mean, it just feels like this important paradox. It's like, okay, we're putting ourselves out there and trying so hard to make it meaningful and honest, and to have integrity and so forth. And yet it feels like there isn't integrity in perfectionism, right? I mean, it's like, let me look at that part of myself that needs that kind of that ego part of me that needs to be perfect. And for me, and I think I can project here onto you a little bit safely. It's like that's the work. It's like saying, "Fuck that!" Like I have to. I can free myself. And if I just, and again using the book as a metaphor here, it's like if I just keep editing it and it's never good enough, then like I'm trapped, right?
Yeah. I mean, the work really is letting go of that. And it's funny, I posted on my stories yesterday about the have you seen this, Andrea? It's the meeting my younger self for coffee trend.
No.
And
Ooh,
yeah,
tell me.
it's a huge thing on TikTok and Instagram right now. And it's essentially like a modified inner child meditation where people are envisioning going and having coffee with their younger selves and having this conversation. And it's funny because I said, honestly, I don't want to have coffee with my younger self. She's such a controlling perfectionist. She would judge the way that I'm kind of not settling, but embracing good enough. I'm embracing my journey. I'm not obsessing over the destination or the result. And she would be like, what are you doing? Right. But my growth and my healing has been letting go of controlling and perfecting and micromanaging and constantly having that alert, fearful part of me online. And yeah, it has been kind of rolling with the punches more, seeing how the chips fall, and being able to embrace all of that and not trying to manufacture this illusion of perfection. But yeah, I was just joking that if I met my former self, she would really stress me out because she'd be like, don't we need to do XYZ? And why aren't you trying to perfect this over here? And it is odd that the growth for me has been letting go of needing things to be a certain way. And yeah, the previous version of me was like, no, we must make things a certain way. I was like the perfect epitome of attachment and just having so many expectations and needing all of those conditions to be met. But I was not free. I was in so much bondage to those things. And now I experience a lot more self liberation, a lot more freedom internally because I'm okay with things. And your book is called Radical Acceptance. Like that's the secret, is to radically accept. But to the part of us that wants to control, acceptance feels like death.
You know
We're
what?
like,
Yeah. Well, what honestly listening to you, I can feel it in my heart like, ooh, just just deep empathy for little Sam who would have been judging and criticizing, right? Who just didn't get it, who just was like so afraid. And yay that you've done the work. In fact, I did a future meeting your future self exercise recently, and it was badass. It was badass. I loved it. And it's like doing the work because I mean, again, lots of parallels between us. When I think about similar to you, just so much fear, so much self-doubt, so much fucking needing to prove myself, right? And now, I mean, only I can free myself, only you can free yourself. It's a fucking ballsy journey.
It's so ballsy. I mean, I really think that a lot of what people don't realize is that all that needing to prove, that constant stress of controlling, a lot of it's actually shame based.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that not enough, can't, wants to be seen, can't be seen. I mean, you're just kind of caught. And so with this meeting my future self, it was kind of like this guided meditation thing. And it was just this wonderful, very embodied, like feeling so connected to this future version of myself that is so authentic, that has so much agency. And it was just like, oh, I can't wait to meet you. I mean, it was really cool. And, the only way to get there is to do the work, right? And to be courageous and look at those back to, just, the ego and the judgments that you talk about with your younger self and so forth. It's like, and even all, the important messaging that you have about just being willing to really feel the uncomfortable emotions that we want to avoid, because that's the only way that we get to be free and to
To
be
be
authentic.
free.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something that really holds people back too is that rather than actually becoming aware that these patterns of being are fear-based, they actually will assume it as a part of their identity. I know I did that. I was like, "Oh, I'm just like this. I just like to multitask and I just like to do a lot of things that I'm just a yes girl. Like I say yes to everything." And I thought it was me. And so the ego death hit that much harder when I had to really look at those patterns in the face and heal them, because it felt like I was losing myself initially. And then I realized that anything that I could lose was never me. And that took a while because I thought, oh no, like what's happening to me? I'm not this overachiever anymore. And part of my healing was realizing that the overachiever is the archetype I took on from a place of fear and trauma. Like that's who I became because so many painful things
Well,
happened
it's
to me.
coping. I mean, that's
Yes,
what you
it's
do.
coping.
It's survival. But let me ask if you're comfortable. Like, was there something in particular that happened that caused this? Was it just a whole accumulation of life experiences? I mean, what's the background that led you
Yeah.
through so much heartache?
Well, to be honest, the background that led me here is really what connects me with so many people in my online community, especially. But I was a child of immigrants, and there was a lot of cultural pressure, household pressure to be excellent. And that was the way that our parents learned that they would be able to create security for themselves. Like you have to go to school and you have to make the best grades and you have to do really well. And I understand now looking back that that was their beliefs about creating
Well,
safety
and
and
they
like a good
and they
life.
wanted it was a way to help make sure. I mean, it's a survival mechanism for them too.
Exactly that. And I've forgiven them and I love them. And, we can talk about it now and laugh about things that happened in the past. But as a child, the way you internalize that is not, oh, my parents just want the best for me, even if they say that over and over. You experience it as I'm not a good enough person, or I'm not doing well, or I need to be better than I am,
It's
or I
more. It's
it's
fucking more, more,
more.
more,
It's
right?
always more. And so, yes, I developed and some people go the opposite way too. They develop like the black sheep persona, right? Where it's like, oh, I can't do anything right. But I was the eldest, so I took on this sort of like star academic golden child, and I was like in the newspaper for being in the arts community, like all kinds of things like this. And I thought that that's where my security was. And to my younger self's credit, it was the time in which I got the most praise. Like that's how I knew and understood love. It was like, "Oh, you do really well in school, like you get your face in the paper or like you win the writing competition." Like that's when people clap for you and your mom gives you a big hug and says she's proud of you. And so my internal self learned like that's what you have to do to be safe and loved. And I didn't know that that was what was going on for like a decade until honestly you start to hit that wall, that energetic burnout where you just physically don't have the capacity to do it at the same pace that you were. And that happens to people at different points in time, but I think generally speaking, I'm seeing it happen to people in the late 20s, early 30s, where it's just like, man, I used to be able to wake up early and have all these coffees and not sleep well and do all these things. And now I'm just hitting a wall. And it's like, yeah, because you overexhausted all of your resources. Like you were never supposed to function at that capacity. And so I felt like my body physically started to break down and make it hard for me to get out of bed and just do the things that were normal to me previously. And that was a whole identity crisis because I was like, like, who am I if I can't get up and do all these things in a day and support all these people and create all these things? And it really forced me to be with the breakdown, which of course led to the breakthrough.
Yeah.
But
Okay, but hang on.
yeah,
Slow down for a second. What did the breakdown look like? How bad was it?
honestly, the breakdown was pretty bad. And I'm glad it was because I truly think that not getting what you want, things not going the way you expect is the perfect catalyst for learning how to become the source of love and security for
If you can,
yourself.
if you when you have the wisdom to interpret it like that, sweet. Otherwise, fuck.
Otherwise, fuck. Yes, honestly, if you're in that moment, fuck. You need to get to the other side, and if anything inspires you, if you're there, is just to keep putting one foot in front of the other until it all makes sense, and it will. But at the time, I was really going through it. Like I remember I hyperfixated a lot on mental illness at the time. And I remember thinking, like, is it this? Is it this? Because I just had no way of making sense of my new self, which wasn't really myself at all, but it was me recovering from the false self, the overachieving archetype. But it was such a foreign experience in my body to have no energy, to experience no joy and activities. And I thought, is this depression? Like, what's going on with me? And that persisted for almost a year where I just kind of felt on and off. There were some times where I would like catch a bit of wind again, like I'd maybe go into like a manic state, if you will, and I was like, oh, I'm back. But then I would crash back and fall. And it was about a year before I was like, okay, maybe, maybe this is my new reality. Because the entire year I was resisting it. I was like, no, this isn't who I am. I can't let this happen to me. Where did all my energy go? Like, what if I don't become the successful version of myself that I envisioned for me? Like, but actually, this breakdown forced me into radical acceptance, your book. And it was like this moment where I felt the grief and the peace of my acceptance. There was a little bit of grief because I was like, oh, man, like I really thought like I was going to do all these like incredible things, and like I guess I'm not anymore. But when I accepted it, I was like, huh, wow, I don't have to fight this reality anymore. Like this, maybe this, I just make the best of this situation. And that was the turning point. And that was when I finally learned, I'm like, oh my God, whatever you resist, persists. Like I learned it somatically because as soon as I stopped resisting that and I was like, this is my new life now. I just started kind of chugging along without this like strong egoic attachment to needing it to change or be different. I was like, this is it. And slowly it felt like all the energy I was using to fight the experience that was
Mhm.
literally
Yeah.
happening.
And the fear, right? The fear of just not measuring up for yourself, and I can imagine, how scary you said a little grief. I'm like, "Only a little?" I'm thinking a lot
Well,
of grief, but maybe just a
the
little.
whole year was like grief, honestly. But then in the end, I was like, man, this is kind of sad. Like I can't believe I'm letting go of all of this. But you're right. All of that energy prior was being utilized by fear, or fear was kind of like running through my system constantly. And then when I fell into like a sad but peaceful acceptance about like, oh, I guess this is just what my life is now, all of that sort of recalibrated itself. It's like I moved out of fear, and there was even a little bit of compassion for that. I was like, oh, I had a compassion for the collective at the same time, where I was like, man, like maybe other people feel like this too. Right? I felt like my most grieving, painful moments deeply connected me to other people because I couldn't know those experiences until I went
Yeah,
through them.
you had that empathy of what it
Yeah.
feels like to be in that despair, in that doubt is what it
Yes.
sounds like.
Yes. And
Ooh.
before that, I didn't know. I was like, oh, you can just like work hard and avoid that.
Yeah.
And then
Totally,
like
don't
that,
look
like
there.
that's what I
Don't look,
thought. And
keep moving.
I was probably really judgmental of people in the past
Oh,
too. I mean,
yeah.
I was really
Mhm.
young in my early 20s and late teens. I was like, just work hard. But then I found myself not being able to combat what was happening. And so I was like, man, this sucks. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person. Like, I guess this is what depressed people feel, is what I thought. And so again, I started moving through life with this sense of, I guess this is it. Like, this is my new life. And all of the energy that was originally sort of circulating and being recycled fearfully just recalibrated and kind of started coming back to me. And I started feeling like my old self again, not the chaotic sort of like, I have to get it all done, I gotta hustle, but I just started feeling, I don't know how else to say it other than like normal, just like, oh, like there's me, like just feeling more engaged with people again, like looking into my hobbies, engaging with those. I was like, I'm okay. And the beautiful thing about that was that I realized I could be okay without all of my attachments being met.
Mm,
And
mhm.
that
Hang on, say
was
that again. I could be okay without all my attachments being met.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, with all of my expectations being met, with all of the things that I was trying to control and manage, I realized, wait, I didn't even manage those well the past year. They didn't happen the way I wanted them to, and I'm okay. I'm still engaged in my close relationships. Like I'm going to my dance classes, I'm roller skating on the street, like I'm okay. And that was the birth of everything that I'm creating now and engaging with now, because the real crux of my work is that you are your greatest source of peace, love, and security. And it's honestly until you can't make things happen the way you want them to, that you can't realize that, because before that happens, you actually think that making money, attracting a partner, or like losing weight, you actually think that that's what's making you happy. And it's only when that doesn't happen the way you want it to that you learn that you can become the source of your own joy. And so, yeah, releasing any of that needing to happen the way it happened, or wanting it to happen, or happening the way I wanted it to, just allowed me to realize, like, oh, you can create a really beautiful, joyful life without any of your expectations
Well,
being
yeah,
met.
without the I mean, essentially, like you say, the attachment, without the ego, without the conditions. But let me just rewind for a little bit. So were you working during this time, or were you able just to kind of
Yeah.
take time off? No, okay,
I
so
was
you were
I was
working.
actually working in retail. This is the crazy thing. Less than what year was this? So about 4 to 5 years ago, I was working in retail at a dance store. Like I was a dancer. So I was like working and selling like ballet shoes and leotards and tights. And I was working there from like 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., like just kind of like a regular, like 40-hour a week job, for like $15 an hour. And that's what I was doing. And I had taken on that job as in my mind temporarily. I was like, this is just like a thing I'm doing temporarily. But then like I didn't have like the energy or capacity to change that situation. Like I was like, oh, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna apply for a different job. I'm gonna start a new career. Like I kept thinking those thoughts, and then it wasn't happening. And so I was like 6 months later, I was like, I can't believe I'm still like in this job. And again, I'm still in that self-critical loop. I'm
Right,
still
yeah,
in the
just
fearful
pure
loop of,
judgment.
yeah,
Mhm.
I'm still in judgment. I'm still like, I got to get out of here.
And
This
not
is
enough. You're
bad.
not It's not enough.
It's not enough. It's not enough. It's bad. Like, I can't
Sure.
believe I'm working in this store. Like, I'm embarrassed, all these things. And then towards the end of the year, I was like, I work in the store. Like this is where I work.
How
And
was there a catalyst? I mean, was there like a book, a quote, a something, or did it just sincerely just bubble up from inside of you because that's deep wisdom, right? I mean, it is
yeah,
deep wisdom
you know
ultimately.
what it was? I don't think she'll ever listen to this podcast, but there was a woman that was hired to work in the store.
Oh, she's listening to this podcast. I'm gonna find her and send it to her.
There was a woman
Go
who was
ahead.
hired to work in the store, and I want to say, I'm just guessing her age. I think she was maybe like 55 to 60 years old. She was super sweet, one of the most incredibly kind people I have ever met, and I loved being paired with her at the store. And she was a mother of two, and she had been a previous professional ballet dancer, but she's like 55, 60 years old now, so she's not dancing anymore, and she's working full time in the store. And I remembered that I suddenly realized that as I was judging myself, I was actually judging her too.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, as
Because if
in
it's not
like,
good enough for you, it's not good enough for her either.
exactly, like I'm judging like me at like 25 years old working in the store, but then what about her at like 58 years old? Like she works here too, and like, how is that bad? Is that shameful? Is that embarrassing? Or is this just a beautiful human who is doing her best in life and showing up to work and like responding to her responsibilities, like putting on a kind, compassionate face to customers? Like this is not a bad life. And getting to know her more deeply, because we had a lot of time where no one was inside and we just talk and stuff. I realized what what a horrifying judgmental lens I was living through, where I thought like, oh, if I work in like retail at like any age in my life, I guess, like that's somehow bad and I need to be doing something else. But I realized I was judging not only me, but her and so many other people who were kind, amazing people who are doing their best in the world and making the best of a situation. And so I realized, you know what? Maybe this isn't a bad job. Maybe I just have a bad mindset. like
Snap. Calling
because
yourself
I
out.
yeah, and I started being a little bit more big picture. I started thinking about people in other countries, and I was like, you know what? Someone else in the world would kill to have my little 10 to
Well, your
6 job.
job and but I also just want to, sort of connect dots here when you come up, not just immigrants, but Asian immigrants, right? Where
Mhm.
there's just my husband's Indian and Asian Indian from New
Yeah.
Delhi, and so I'm intimately familiar with that kind of. And it's not unique just to Asians, but there's a
Yes,
trope
yes.
about
Yeah.
Chinese and Japanese
Yeah,
and
and I
Indian families that
absolutely.
pressure is real, that
It's so
expectation
real.
is real. So I mean, retail, fine, whatever. But, I get where you came by that judgment honestly, especially as a superstar student and artist and so forth, that you expected, in air quotes, more. And then it was like, but wait, the thing that I have to say, the thing that's just bubbling in my brain, it's that Lao Tzu quote about chop wood, carry water. I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's like I'm just sitting here listening and nodding my head and thinking about that older, wonderful woman that you described. And it's like, in so many ways, it doesn't effing matter. And now listen, I'm a super high achiever, built a big business, da 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 da. So, I mean, I say those words to myself literally every day. Andrea,
Yeah.
chop wood, carry water.
Chop
Like,
wood, carry
stay
water.
present. And, you can do extraordinary things in retail. You can do extraordinary things in art. It's like how you show up. That's what matters. And that's when I think chop wood, carry water, it's like, how are you showing up? And, Lao Tzu, or maybe it's not him, but or maybe it was Thich Nhat Hanh. It's like, if you're doing the dishes, do the dishes. Like, feel the soapy water, right? And so and again, this is deep wisdom that has to replace what feels like for you and for me too, that received sense of what I need to be, who I need to be okay. And thank God you did retail, because maybe if you were working at Goldman Sachs or,
Oh,
um
I would have crashed and burned. I would have crashed and burned, honestly. It was the exact experience I needed. And that's crazy because at the time I was like, this is the worst experience ever. I was like, I can't believe I'm here. I graduated from McGill University with a 3.9. I was like, what am I doing here? But it was actually there where I learned how to actually accept myself. And that journey continued onwards past that time. But I think through meeting this woman and working with her for several months, I realized, wait, like I love and appreciate you as a person, and I know I don't need you to do anything other than what you're doing. And so the idea that I had to prove myself through like another job or something else kind of started to dissolve, which is really interesting because what that actually allowed was for my imagination to flourish about what was possible. Because prior to that, I felt that any expectation I created or placed upon myself, I had to meet. And so that causes a really interesting like brain block where I actually limit the amount of possibilities that I can experience because I have to believe in my capacity to achieve those goals. But when I actually released the idea that I needed to achieve anything or prove anything, I was like, wait, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could do that. And that was actually when I was like, maybe I will write a book one day. But prior to this, I couldn't have imagined doing that because I was like, oh, if I say I'm going to write a book, then I have to write a book and I have to prove myself through writing a good book. And like that would have limited so much of my imagination. But I actually just started to consider like what else is possible. And before I was actually doing this, I met someone who became a good friend who was a realtor. And she was like, man, you'd be really good at that. Maybe you should work with me. And I was in such a receptive place of acceptance of maybe I work in this retail store forever. I was like, yeah, like, why don't I try it? I'll take the real estate course and just kind of see where the chips fall. Like my acceptance mindset allowed me to try so many more things because I didn't need it to happen in a perfect way. I was like, yeah, let's just see what happens. And so I did that for 3 years, and it was good, but I could feel that it wasn't feeding my soul. And I'm really grateful I listened to that because I probably could have squashed that voice for another 10 or so years. But I listened to myself and I would journal every day. And I remember revisiting my journals and I was like, see, I keep coming back to these things. Like there's something in me that wants to do something that's more aligned. And yeah, and again, like all of that journey was spawned by the acceptance of not needing this journey to give me anything.
it's a paradox, right? I mean, it is. I just feel like it is the ultimate paradox. It's like, if the metaphor that comes to mind, it's like you have to be kind of this empty vessel, right? To, if you want to get filled up, it's like you've got to be willing to be empty. And that is scary when when your identity as you have indicated, is so wrapped up in your performance and your achievement. But ultimately, that's the only path to freedom, right? And that, so, I mean, congratulations and thank you. And now, I mean, we'll segue into the beautiful and important work you do now. Like I said in the beginning, you've got about 1 million very engaged fans. You post to TikTok and Instagram, if not daily, many times a week, with so much wisdom. So I'd love just to, maybe rewind just a pinch, because, so much of what we're talking about is, as you talk about, manifestation and mindset. I would love for you just to talk a little bit about when you, and manifestation. I feel like it's this word that's thrown out a ton and, can be confusing to people. When you think about what manifestation means to you and what you're trying to teach people, can you, and I realize that could be a whole book too. Can you summarize it in just a minute or two?
Yes, let me do my best. And I'm glad we are going this direction because I really feel that I teach manifestation differently.
You
I
do. You
teach,
totally do. It is like
yes,
very practical. Like it is
and
very relatable.
thank you. And I really teach it from the lens of non-attachment, which is the key to manifestation. But ironically, a lot of the messaging around like modern manifestation is like, here's how to get what you want. And a lot of that is speaking to the part of you that is attached. And so, but simply, manifestation is the art of creating your thoughts into things. That's the simplest way I can put it. And it's believing that what you can see in your mind is a reality that you can taste, touch, and experience. Now, what keeps us in opposition to experiencing that as reality is our beliefs, our emotions, our habits and behaviors, which are born of other beliefs about ourselves. And whenever I hear that someone wants to create a certain experience, what I really, really want to get curious about is what is going to be the internal somatic experience of that thing. We don't
And what do you
actually,
mean by internal somatic experience of
what
that
is it
thing?
going to feel like? Right? Do we really want like this number in the bank account or this type of body? Or do we want what that's going to feel like? And so what we end up doing is we go on a journey of figuring out what is the desired internal experience? What is the desired feeling that we want to experience? And ultimately, what sort of relationship to myself would I need to have in order to create that experience now? That experience is possible for us to generate now, but we have a lot of conditioning that says, oh, I can only feel that if I get this. We have a lot of if then conditionality in our language, but the present moment banishes this idea of if then. There is no if then. There is if now, now. If I had to put it into words, it's not a perfect formula, but if now, now. And so the work is to figure out how can I create that experience and relationship to self that is loving, positive, abundant, encouraging, uplifting without needing to meet those conditions. What stops me from actually generating that emotion now? A lot of those beliefs are, well, I'm not good enough now. I need to do this first. So we have to work through all of these shame-based layers, all of these self-critical layers. But once we do that, manifestation really just becomes a lifestyle. It's not really a strategy. It's, oh, I love and believe in myself and I act as I intend. So I want to write a book. I believe I can write a book. I do things that writers do to create books on a daily basis. And then, yeah, your results eventually, you could call them manifestations, they start to reflect your internal beliefs. And we think that this is like magic, but we're actually most of the time already doing this. We're just creating evidence in the opposite direction, right? I don't believe I can write a book. I don't believe I can do the thing. And then we actually create the physical reality of not doing it. So we're doing the same thing. We're just learning how to reverse engineer that process to create results that are more fun to play with. And I have to say too that the result of, let's say, creating a book or creating money is not actually superior to not doing that. It's just an experience that you can prefer and choose to play with. I really want for people to understand that manifestation is not a way to quell your fears, but is a playful way of moving through the world. Like, oh my gosh, like what could happen if like, yeah, like I want to be a speaker and like be in a room full of women, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing this next month. And it's like, that's so fun, right? I'm not becoming a speaker because I feel so unworthy inside and I really want people to validate me and say that I did a good job. But I just want to bounce around and see what it's like to be in the room and connect with other people and speak my truth. And so manifestation to me is simply creating a life that is fun. It is creating a life that feels like the true you wants to experience. And we can't experience that until we uncover who the true you is. Most of us are operating as our fear masked selves, as the parts of us that want to become worthy, the parts of us that want to feel important, loved. We're afraid that we're not worthy of love. And from that place, people try to manifest. And we don't get very good results from that place because the thing we want to experience is love. And so, yeah, it's basically a paradigm shift is what we need to experience what we call manifestation. But I think manifestation is really just like a lifestyle that results of that paradigm shift of choosing to love yourself now and believe in what you want to create is real.
But that's it, and I agree, right? And as I've indicated to you, man, I've crossed the Rubicon, and, if you would have talked to me 10 years ago, you'd have been like, "Whoa, you're very different." I mean, seemingly, I don't know, maybe not. I feel very different. Um, but how do you cross that Rubicon? I mean, because on the one hand, everything you're saying, I agree with, but for the person sitting here going, "Oh my gosh, I haven't crossed the river yet." Is there like what I mean, I realize there's probably having watched a ton of your TikToks and Instagram reels, there's a ton of things, but is there when you think about like, ooh, how does somebody get started? Like what can somebody listening to this right now go, all right, I'm willing to take the journey, Sam. What's my next step?
Yeah. Well, interestingly, asking what the next step is just goes to show how not present one is willing to be, right? We're always looking for what do I do next? Like, what happens after that? What happens after that? Instead of what am I going to embody and do in the now? And so, one of
But
the,
that's
my,
intellect. To be fair, come on, that's intellectual. Like, and I say that because I think about my, younger me, the younger me that I'd have coffee with, that didn't know what to do. Like, oh my God, I'm uncomfortable. I'm busting my ass to achieve all this stuff. I'm working hard as an executive, as a mom, and yet I know I'm not present. Like I don't. You know what I mean? So like I feel like ultimately there is a doing. I feel like you've got to like do some degree of work before you can get to the being. And I want to come back and talk about ascendant masters who are masters of being, because I know that's something that you're passionate about too. But I mean, like, what is that? I mean, I feel like it's otherwise an intellectual exercise because if you're on this side of the river wanting to cross it because you don't know how to get present, I mean, that's the conundrum, right? Again, maybe another paradox.
well, yeah, I mean, you could say it is an intellectual exercise, but the intellectual part of me wants to say, well, why are we perceiving a river that there is to cross? Right? Because what I would really say is, how would you do it if you already had it? Right? How would you do it if everything was as you wished it to be? What would it look and feel like to embody this day as if that were happening? Right? Neville Goddard says to live in the end. And what he means by that is to live in the energetic experience and frequency of whatever end you intend. So let's say the end that you're intending is, I want to have $1 million or I want to have a huge mansion one day. Okay. What does it look like to live this day as if that is already true? So it isn't so much a doing, it is a being. It's whatever you are doing already with a different energetic signature. And interestingly, embodying that different energetic signature will give you impulses and intuition into new things that you will do. But if you stay in the how, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? You never get those impulses or the intuition because you're trying to follow a fear based mind to the place that you want to go instead of actually embodying, I'm already there. This is how it feels to, and I remember this, I had this moment of gratitude before I hopped on this podcast because 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would lay in bed and pretend I was in a podcast interview. I'd literally be like, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I would do this. And so I lived in the frequency of I'm already a guest. I wasn't waiting to become a guest and say like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? I was like, I'm already a guest. And so I just created content as if I was already a guest. And then soon people started asking me. And so these opportunities, these situations, events, they come into your awareness because of the energetic frequency you're creating from and showing up as. So, yeah, I think the thing to do is to do as if it was already happening. And and the thing I also like to follow this up with is that you get to use your life as an experiment. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to try any of these things. All I offer is an exercise, an invitation for you to embody if you are not liking the results you're creating right now. This is nothing you have to try. If you love everything as it is and you're super appreciative, great, keep doing what you're doing. This is only if you feel like, oh, I just feel like I can't get anywhere. Like you said, I'm on that other side of the Rubicon. I don't know. Okay, try to live your day, your week as if it was happening and just observe. Just observe what happens, what sort of things you feel naturally inclined to do, what sort of comes into your field, right? We've all experienced the synchronicity of like, that's so weird. Like I literally just said that or I just did that and then like you said that, right? So that is the magic. Is just observing your reticular activating system in your brain start to make connections when you embody a new frequency.
Yeah. I love that, and I'm gonna add on to that. I've been going through a particular challenge that I've been ruminating about, and what I was able to do to, if you will, escape the rumination and kind of like, the scarcity of the situation was just reminding myself that I could trust. And it was like, I'd think about it, I'd lie in bed at night and in the morning, just like, I can totally trust myself. And that feeling of trust, like I felt it in my body and I could just feel my saying those words gently to myself. Like I can trust, I think I said like my wise and grateful heart. I can trust my wise and grateful heart. And it would be, and this was intense. This was super intense for me. And it was amazing how after not that much time, it'd be like, oh, I feel better. And I'd wake up in the morning and I'd be like, oh, and I can trust my wise and grateful heart. And it was like, oh, okay, yes. Right. And just so that your point about the energetic signature, like it, it, it's totally doable, but it does take that intention. And for me, I just wanted to get back to a place of feeling present and harmonious, right? And not, just not wanting any other attachment. So just adding that. No, I wanted to share a little something that made me cry this morning when I was doing my research for you, for our show together. It was your post from New Year's Eve on Instagram. And you say at the end, I have no resolutions for 2025 because I have exited the era of fixing myself. I'm like, fuck yeah, sister. I'm not a never-ending self-improvement project. I'm a human. The only thing I'm improving this year is how much I remember and love myself for that. And just, I mean, it was so meaningful to me because I've been a never-ending self-improvement project, and that whole business, like when I'm giving advice to people that I love, I'll say like, just remember, like right? And so when I read this morning, it was like, oh, remember and love myself. And I know it can feel cliche, but it's like this is to me the pure essence of what we are called to do. And to, and even like you talk about kind of being addicted to, yes, to doing, but you talk in some of your material about being addicted to like self-help, and that's real, right? And I think it takes some serious self-awareness to go like, let me, again, using my metaphor, is there even a river? We don't know. But crossing, whatever it is, getting out of that sort of obsessive or like kind of chronic state of not enough, got to keep fixing into, oh, I'm going to remember who I am. And I'm going to love it, love me. That, but that's, to me, that is the journey. That's the, to get there is that paradoxical degree of work.
Yeah, a lot of it is so paradoxical, like you said. And, I think the reason why we are so unhappy, and it sounds so cliche as well, but it's because we're not present. I mean, we hallucinate a version of ourselves that we believe is superior to the one we are now. And we're like, the version of me who has finished the book, or the version of me who has lost weight, the version of me who has more money. We like hallucinate this literal version. And then we compare that version with who we are now, which causes us to self reject and self punish in the now, instead of becoming present and realizing this is the only me that exists. There is no better me. There is no worse me. There's just me. And I think when I had to break up finally with I call it my perfectionist fantasy. I think we all have one, right? It's the day that we wake up, everything goes perfectly, everything goes our way. Like we are the ideal body type, right? Like we're always happy. And this perfectionist fantasy was keeping me from the true reality and knowing of myself. It was like the me I was in the present was never going to measure up to a fantasy. And so I had to realize the fantasy is not real. And there was a part of me that grieved that too, because I was like, I was so attached to that. I was like, no, please, like with enough hard work, I can become that version. I can. And I think I would even create little glimpses of what I believe that version would be like. Like if I would achieve something I thought that was really hard, I'd be like, see, I can be that version. But it was always temporary. It was always brief because it was just a fleeting thought I was having about myself. But I really had to, yeah, break up with this fantasy and choose presence, choose reality, choose me imperfectly perfect, and stop measuring myself up against this thought, this imaginary version of myself that was never gonna be struggling, was always gonna get everything done. I just realized it was cruel. And it took me a long time to realize that it was cruel. Like I thought that was love, to be honest, for the longest time, but it was cruel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, listen, oh my God, like we are assholes to ourselves. Like genuinely, we especially overachievers, this whole business of it's never enough. And because it's never enough, like you just keep scrambling and doing and trying to get to, like you say, the fantasy, the imaginary end zone where you can be like, okay, I've arrived, but it never, it's like but it is addiction. I mean, right, I come from a family of a lot of addiction, and I think of, it wasn't going to be okay for me to be an alcoholic or any other things, but what I could be is a workaholic and addicted to doing, right? Because then you get the accolades and the atta girls and, oh, how worthy are you? And how, what a good girl you are because you're busting your ass all the
Yeah.
time.
And what's so hard is our overculture rewards that as opposed to being like an alcoholic. Like we kind of are like, oh man, like
Oh,
that's not
totally. Yeah,
good.
yeah. No,
But yeah, but the
that's
workaholic, we're like, good for you, Andrea. That's amazing.
yeah, yeah. Keep grinding yourself into the ground. There's merit in that, right? Kind of,
Mhm.
and it takes, I feel like again, it takes a degree of courage just to look at that and go, "F no, like that's enough. What am I doing?" And for me, I mean, it impacted, my relationship with my kids and how I showed up in the world. I'm like, I gotta quit. Like, I gotta quit doing this. So, really just boldly faced what was driving this and so forth. So, like I said, grateful to have crossed at least this particular river. And what's amazing to me in my journey is, oh my gosh, yeah, there's still some setbacks and hardships and so forth, but man, it's like it just keeps getting better, right? To be able to be present, like what you described, and what I love about your work, it's like, oh, I know that feeling, right? And only I can give that feeling, that like just purely present, harmonious being mode. Only I can give that to myself. And I feel extremely grateful that I can do that. And it is wholly worth doing the work to get there, right? Because it's a lot of undoing. I know we're talking about like, okay, but there are layers I feel in my own experience. It's like, oh, those layers of fear and self-doubt that were, kind of so unconscious. It's like as I shed those layers, just how joyful and liberating it feels, and again, I have low vibe moments and I'm like, okay, let me look at that, and just be really honest. And to your point, like a little more, I keep, I remind myself regularly, I'm so, like, I'm such an alpha. Like, I always say, like, type AAA Aries. I'm like,
Oh
Andrea,
my God, same. I
yeah,
was
see,
feeling
that's
that
how we vibe.
from the get-go. Yeah, I have triple Aries as well.
I mean, it's like, can I just be gentle with myself? Like, can I just give myself permission? It's hard, but but that's the work, right? That's what we're called to do. Let me ask you this: when you think about, I mean, you've manifested a million followers, this incredible um, archive of wisdom and so forth. When you think, like, what have you manifested that you're most proud of, or you feel like, yes, this is emblematic of what I know now? What is that?
Oh, that's really beautiful. I mean, 2 things. Definitely, my book agent and this whole process, because since I was 5 years old, I knew I wanted to write. When I was young, I would enter writing competitions and I would sit in my room and like author like false novels, and like I was always journaling. I had post-its all over my desk and I still do to this day. I can't believe it's actually happening. I'm like, wow, that's so proof right there. But then the other word that came to mind immediately was just my community. I have an amazing, amazing community of people online, people who come in person to my retreats, people who work with me one on one in groups. And these people serve as the embodiment of the work. And the way that I know that what I'm doing is working is they come to me and they're like, I don't judge myself anymore. They're like, I genuinely love who I am. And there's always a really, like, yesterday I cried because a client said to me that she loves crying now. She used to be this like very like stoic, like I don't want to feel emotions kind of person. And a lot of her overachieving was to get away from feeling the disappointment or sadness or fear. And she's like, I just realized like how much I was rejecting myself. And now I love myself and I love crying. And even when I feel scared, I'm okay with that too. And, these people are reflections of the work and everything I've created. It's like that's who I did it for, really, is my past self and them. So yeah, my online community and people showing up, whether that's in my emails and in my comments and my calls, and just being with them like that shows me, oh my God, like I really became like who I wanted to be. And
You're
I think
still so young. You got
I'm
decades
so
ahead.
excited to see who else I become, but
Yeah,
I
you
think
gotta meet
that's
your
the
future
journey,
self.
my future self, but that I think that's the reason why we go on the journey. It's not about achieving everything. It's about just like meeting other versions of ourselves, like just seeing who we can become through the process.
Yeah, and you've got a really fun, I mean, again, your clips are so relatable and so practical. My team here at Your Tango is obsessed with you, so just, FYI, we're, fangirl and boying out, big time. But you have a good one talking about, like, The Sims and how, like, the point isn't to win, which is so helpful for an overachiever. It's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? It's not to win. It's not to, like, prove myself." But you're like, "No." So talk about that. Like, it's just such a practical, like, it's just such a good, like, reframing. So what do you mean, like, Sims? What does that have to do with our lives?
Well, it's so funny. That was my favorite game growing up. And the odd thing about playing The Sims is there's no objective to the game. There's no way to like beat the game. There's no levels to the game. The whole game is just to experience the Sims, the people, the families. And you can see them literally go from birth until death. You can watch your Sim be birthed and die. And you don't get a reward for that. There's nothing that happens. There's nothing that comes up on the screen and is like, you've won or like you've passed the final boss, right? The whole point of the game is just to experience the game. And yeah, I realize that our life is the exact same way. It's not about like, how do I use this day to get to the next day, which is going to get me to the next level and the next achievement. It's, can I just experience myself cooking this meal? Can I just experience myself going on this walk? When I play The Sims, one of my favorite things to do is, I still play to this day, it's quite peaceful, but is to actually go into the zoom out mode. So you can zoom out and you can watch your sim get in the car. You can watch them like drive to the library. And like these little things as a gaming player are so fun. And so I've sort of simified my life where if I go for a walk or I go to the grocery store or I go with anyone outside, I just imagine me watching and observing myself going to do that. I'm like, oh, getting in the car, going to the grocery store. And some people would call this romanticizing your life, but more simply, it's just being present to your life. Like, oh, right now I'm going to the grocery store. That's fun.
Yeah, it's like we were
Okay.
talking about before, when you're washing the dishes, wash the dishes.
Wash the dishes, exactly. And the only time that washing the dishes and being at the grocery store isn't fun is when you're trying to be somewhere else at the same time. Like I can be at the grocery store and thinking, oh, I got to go back home and I got to be on the podcast. And like now I can't enjoy being in the grocery store. I'm like using that as a means to an end. I got to get out of here. But if I'm just there, I can have so much fun in the grocery store. I'm like, ooh, maybe I'll have that for dinner. And then I'm like, ooh, fun. Like the whole experience can be enjoyable. Even doing my laundry, if I'm really present to that, I can have fun with it.
Well, it's just to me, it's simply how you show up. And I go to the grocery store and do these, my work around my house a lot better. But yeah, every now and then I'm still like, ooh, I got to get to this next thing. I'm in a hurry. I'm in a rush. I need to be somewhere else. And that's a choice. I mean, it's an unconscious choice that I have tried to become more conscious of, where it's like,
Yes. And we have to love ourselves and our patterns too, right? Like I'm not someone who like never experiences these patterns. Like healing from them is learning how to hold space for them, not eliminating them, right? So that speediness, like you and I being triple Aries, we are always gonna have that. Like we're always gonna be like, go. It's kind of like I feel like I'd be eliminated in the Olympics for like going a little bit faster than like the gun shoot if I were in a race. Like my foot would come off and they'd be like, ah, she's disqualified because I'm just so ready, like at the go. But noticing that within myself is just an opportunity to come back. Like, oh, there's nowhere to go. Like it's safe right now. Something I tell myself. I loved your comment about like my wise, grateful heart. I can trust my wise heart. For me, mine is the next moment is already taken care of because I have this
I can feel
constant
that. You say
impulse.
that, and my whole
Yeah,
body just went like, ah.
it's taken care of, right? But I have a part in me that's like, I got to take care of it. Like, I got to get over there. Like, I have to fix it. And it's like, if it's taken care of, then I can be here where I am and I don't have to lurch. Um, and yeah, I've had to accept that that's a part of me. Like, I used to think, oh, I got to get rid of that. Like, I don't want to be this like urgent self. But, from a healed place, like my sense of urgency can turn into a lot of excitement. It can turn into a lot of ambition. It can turn into a leadership, right? These are beautiful things and I'm sure you embody all of those with your team. But yeah, when it comes from a fearful place, it's just a call for us to love and hold space for that and be like and remind ourselves like it's okay. It's already taken care of. I can trust my wise heart.
Yeah, no, I love that. All right, I want to spend a few more minutes as we finish up, pivoting to what money really is. And is that okay? Do you have a few minutes to get into kind of going from scarcity to abundance? You've got some materials um, out there. So let's, and everybody just perked up. They're like, okay, money,
Yeah,
talk to me.
exactly.
So how do
Got
you
it.
go? Kind of how do you? And I realize this is very much of a continuation from what we've been talking about. So it's not a big pivot, but love to have you talk a little bit about going from that scarcity to abundant mindset, and then how does one go from there to manifesting more financial success and so forth.
Yes. Okay. I could talk about this forever, but I'll try to be succinct and impactful at the same time. So, moving from scarcity to abundance will happen when you understand what the source of money is. So I grew up like most people not most people, but people in America, in the American public school system, where I didn't really learn what money was, how money worked, where money came from. It was only when I was trying to make more money from a place of scarcity that I was able to learn and integrate these lessons. But it took me forever to learn that money was a symbol, not the thing itself. Like a word does not point to the actual thing or isn't the actual thing. Money was the same thing. Money was a symbol and money was a representation of value. It's a medium for exchange. It's not the thing itself that's valuable. And for so long, I had thought money is valuable and I have to get it to become more valuable. The huge shift for me was realizing that money represents value, and value comes from where? Us. We create the perception of value. We create things that we value, right? Like we create goods, we create services, we monetize ideas. And so I had this huge awakening when I realized that money was the representation of creativity.
Okay, hang on. Let me say that again. Money is the representation of creativity. Okay, keep going.
Yes. Money is exchanged when we value creative ideas, creative services, creative goods. And so I began to realize that people were the source of money. Money was a thing that didn't exist until 5,000 years ago. Before that, we were like, hey, I have 5 oranges, you have 5 apples, let's do a trade. And then things got more complex. They were like, how do I trade my cows for, your paper or whatever? It got complicated. So we created a coin, but the coin was not the thing that was valuable. The coin represented the thing that we valued: paper, resources, produce, whatever. And so I started to realize, okay, I shouldn't be asking how to make more money, because money comes from me. Money comes from the exchange of my ideas, my creative services, my goods. I should be thinking about, what do I want to create?
Right.
How
Okay,
can what I
yeah.
create be helpful to other people? And then I was like, wait a second. If I have an infinite well of creativity, then I'm my own bank. And then I started using this example for other people as well, where I talked about, let's just say Taylor Swift had her entire bank account hacked, right? Everything's wiped. She has $0 to her name. Would you still think that she was rich, or is she poor? And it's so weird. Everyone says she's rich. And I'm like, really? But she has no money. She has $0. Why is she so rich? And everyone's like, because she can write another album.
Because she's Taylor Swift. Yeah.
Because she's Taylor Swift. And I'm like, exactly. You're rich because you're you. I'm rich because I'm me. And that is how I learned how to tap into abundance. Money is not what makes me abundant. I'm abundant because I have a unique matrix of gifts, abilities, qualities, skills that make me perfectly suited to create the things that are going to impact the people who are meant to be impacted by it. That's what makes me abundant. Now, what's really incredible is that when you tap into your abundance and you create freely from a place of service, you are going to make a lot of money. It's just the byproduct. You're going to exchange a lot of your ideas. They're going to impact people the way that your book has impacted people, the way your podcast has impacted people. But if we pursue money from a place of, I need more of that, we value the money more than we value ourselves. And that's what creates scarcity.
Well, and I feel like that's the ego too. I mean, just like I'll liken it back to what I shared at the very beginning of our discussion today, that my ego was attached to my book being a New York Times bestseller, and and that brought me to my knees. And then the big breakthrough for me was, what do I want? What do I really want? What do I really want? Okay, what I really want is to have written a beautiful book with as faithfully, with as much integrity as I can, that actually helps people. And then I was like, fuck yeah, I'm free.
Fuck yeah, I'm free. There you go. Yeah, when you realize that all you have to do is meet your intentions, it's like, wow, like you're off the hook, right? The expectations was never the source of your happiness. It was just the intentions, and you can meet those.
And it was that scarcity mindset. It was that scarcity egoic mindset, right? And that, that was what tripped me up. I mean, I would add just a little more to what you're saying. Similarly, having thought about money as a symbol, I mean, I think of it as energy, right? Like it
is, because creativity is energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's an abstraction in a lot of ways, and I feel like having gone through periods of time where there was scarcity. I mean, oh my God, I'm an entrepreneur who lived the American story of no money. It's like I had money, and then I didn't have money, and then it was like credit cards maxed out and depleted my 401k, like crazy shit to fund my business. So I've been through that, and yeah, I mean, but I went through a phase where it was just like it was just terrifying, right? And everything, I feel like so much of my life exhibited that sort of sense of lack and terror. Now I need, similar to you, what you described, kind of having, I don't know, you didn't say rock bottom, but you went through a reckoning. You went through that breakdown. I did something similar in developing my business, and a complete metaphor was like, I need this, I need this, I need this. I need to figure this out, right? To survive. And, that journey for me, that hero's journey got me to where I am now, and I wouldn't trade it, but oh my God.
Yeah.
Like bring
Well,
me to
that's
my
so
knees.
ironic about the hero's journey is there has to be a conflict, but yet we're on our hero's journey trying to not experience a conflict. It's like this is kind of what makes it interesting. This is what raises the stakes. Like this is what makes it an emotional investment for ourselves. And so sometimes it is good to narrativize your life story. And sometimes I say like this to myself, this is the part where I struggle before I realize something. And it creates peace and acceptance around whatever I'm experiencing as a struggle. Like, okay, that's part of the human story. Like I don't want the one where I never experience anything difficult because I want to see who I become through the adversity.
Yeah, well, and you have this great thing that you talked about on one of the podcasts about the best definition of authenticity. You talk about how it's about being in your body in the moment, um, and okay with whatever you're experiencing. Just to be with what is, to not fight or resist, but to simply be honest with what your nervous system is sending to you. And I just want to give a big heck yeah and F yeah to our nervous systems and to that, the wisdom. Because when I think about the time, like I was in resistance for a long time, and if I'm being honest, I still am sometimes, right? Still working on it. But when I think about the wisdom and if there's maybe, I hope people listening and watching this get a ton, but when it's like, oh my God, trust your nervous system. Like when it is sending that signal of discomfort, it's like, trust it. And I love you've got a great, I'm putting my hand to my forehead, a great TikTok on like when it's raining and you're just trying to like shield your forehead and you're like, listen, just let the rain fall. Like you can't resist it in any case, right? I guess you could, yeah, I mean, you could try to put an umbrella on and say, okay, I dodged it, but I feel like the path to healing and wholeness, and to your point about authenticity, which is what we all want. I mean, if anything, when I think of The Sims and this analogy of what the whole point is, I guess I would modify and say, I think it is to be authentic. Yes, it's to be present and that there isn't a point to winning, but I feel like I want to like kind of modify that and go like, ooh, to become like who I really am, right? Without all the layers and pretenses and resistance.
Yeah. I think the point is to forget to find a point. Like be so present that you don't even wonder what the point is. Like you're just there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds like an ascendant master kind of, just the being, just but that to me is also, I mean, again, the paradox of, not to sound kind of too, mystical over here. I go, although that's not a bad thing either, is it's like you get to that state of what is this, and you're right, it's no longer intellectual. It just is.
Yeah, well, it's so funny because Zen masters, if you're familiar with what they do to kind of, uh, this is not the correct term, but haze essentially like newbies, people who want to get into the temples, people who want to meditate with the masters. They offer these really interesting, what's the word for this? I want to say like joke, but it's not exactly a joke. It's kind of like a phrase, an
Is it like a
idiom.
cone?
Yeah, it's a cone. Yeah, it's exactly that. Where the point of the question or the invitation is to actually seize thought, and that's supposed to be. However, the student responds to that is whether or not they're going to be accepted into the temple and whatnot. So they'll say something like, "What's the sound of one hen clapping?" And you'll just kind of be there. And if they come up with a verbal answer, they're like, "Okay, leave. Go. Get
Bang you
out."
in the head. Yeah,
Yeah, they'll like
no, go
slap
ahead
you
with
on
the
the head.
shine.
They're like not ready yet. What they want is for you to be arrested in presence, right? And to be with wonder and spaciousness. And so, yeah, whenever anyone is trying to ask me like what's the point or like what's next, I'm like I think that your question is revealing the state of being that you're in, which is you're seeking, you're leaving the moment, you're trying to resolve something instead of just being with what's there. And when you are there with what's there long enough, it changes. And then the desire to seek and resolve and fix kind of dissipates with that. And so trying to find a thing to like fix the thing is only going to perpetuate needing to fix the thing. So we do need to learn more presence. And I think it has to happen in micro moments initially because we're so not used to being present. Like I couldn't have dropped into full presence 5 years ago. Like I would have like gone into psychosis. I needed to just, pour the tea and be present there. Okay. And then I'll go back into my mind because I'm used to that. That's fine. It's like a mild dissociation. And then it's I go on the walk and it's like, okay, be with your steps. Okay, I'm with my steps on the walk. Okay, and then I come back inside and then I go on my phone and I'm in my mind again. And so I think we need to normalize that the process of becoming present. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't go to a retreat and all of a sudden come back and be like, I'm present all the time.
No, it
right?
To me, it is the journey is the destination. And you talk about like your process being brick by brick. And I just, same here. And thank goodness. And like I said a few minutes ago, and man, those bricks are still being laid for in my life. And I'm sure in yours too, just like every single day, it's like, oh, cool, this, right? And I feel like by doing the work and being open and brave, it just feels like the aperture just keeps opening and it's awesome. So, okay, I've got one last little bit. I could talk to you for days, and I look forward to having you back on my show.
I love this, Andrea. Our energy is like, so
high vibes here. High vibes. But we'll keep space for the low vibes too, because that's part of the experience. If you were on the mountain and you just had a tablet that had like one last thing to say, what would it be? Or, two last things to say. What would it be?
Ooh. Wow. I love the way you asked the question. I'm literally envisioning myself on the mountain now.
Oh, you are on the mountain right now, sister.
I think that's what I'd say. Be here now. Yeah. Now is all there is. Something about the now, because I spent so much of my life trying to be somewhere other than now. Like I feel like I kept using the present moment as like a stepping stone to like another moment that I thought was going to be better than this moment without realizing that there's just one stone. Like there's no other stone. And I kept hallucinating another stone to hop onto that wouldn't allow me to be here now. And so sometimes it's just I put my feet on the ground and I wiggle my toes a little bit and I'm like, be here now.
Yeah, I love that. All right, Samantha Chung, thank you so much. I've loved our conversation. I look forward to having you back. Thanks for being on Getting Open.
Thank you, Andrea. It was a blessing. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to yet another episode of Getting Open with me, Andrea Miller. Thank you so much. If you are following me and the show, I'm so grateful. If you're not, please do. You can follow us on Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. I also would love, love, love to hear from you. You can email me at gettingopen@yourtango.com. If you have suggestions for guests, love to hear what you love, what you hate, we'd like more of. I am bringing my whole heart and mind and gosh, everything else along with my team to you to make your life better and to bring you an amazing, I hope deeply motivating, kick-ass show. So with that, I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for tuning in.